February 20 edition of PFT PM. It's Thursday. I'm now 4 for 4 in my commitment to provide a fresh episode of PFT PM during the annual week after the Super Bowl dark week for PFT Live. I am cursing myself for making that commitment, but there is always something to talk about. I go through the same routine every morning. I tell myself, do you really want to take the time, adjust the toupee, come down to this cold wine cellar? And by the way, for those of you who are fairly new to this, I've been using this as my alternate location for several years now. Have a studio above the garage where we do PFT Live and some episodes of PFT PM if the control room's available and it all lines up that way. Otherwise, anytime I Zoom, I come down here. This is not a kitchen. It's not an Olive Garden restaurant. It's a wine cellar in the house we bought about 10 years ago. We bought the house from a guy who owned both a winery, vineyard, what do you call it? A place that makes wine and a place that makes pools. So it was easier for him and a motivation for him to have nice outdoor pool area and a nice and spacious indoor wine cellar, which we have, 20 bottles of wine in. Most wine, like I'm not buying the wine that is going to be good 40 years from now, and I'll be dead by then. I like to drink the stuff that has, an expiration date, not like milk, but for the most part, you don't want to let a decent bottle of wine sit for more than a year or two. I've heard, I don't know. I know as much as Michael Scott does. This is a red. This is a white. And that's about it. All right, let's get to it. Again, it's Thursday. And I go through this exercise beyond the why did I commit to doing this all week exercise. I then go through the what the am I going to talk about? And then I start looking through the stories that we've written and the stories I'd like to write. And I say, okay, there's plenty to talk about. And one extremely relevant subject as free agency approaches is the state of the salary cap for the 2025 league year, which begins soon. Now the teams know a range. They still don't have the number. No, they used to give the teams an estimate in December. And the problem was the estimate would often come in low, and then the teams would create their budgets because, again, they're all businesses. They'd create their budgets for the next year based on a salary cap number that was too low. They would budget and allocate cash for free agents and restructured and renegotiated and extended contracts that didn't reflect what the salary cap actually became. The union rightfully balked at that. So this year there was no estimate, and now we have a range. From $255 in 2024, that's $255 million per team in cap space, to $277.5 or $281.5 or something in between. So it's a range of about $4 million. It's at least a $22.5 million per team bump. That sounds like a lot. It's not even 10% of last year's cap. So as it gets higher and higher, it's harder and harder to get a big percentage. If you're at 255.5, just 255, I'm sorry, the 0.5 is now. If you're at 255, you need 25.5 to get to 10%. 22.5 is not 10%. I can't tell you what percent it is without the help of my magic little device that does all sorts of things and has rendered multiple industries obsolete, but it's not 10%. It's still a lot. And for teams that were and are in a position where they've got to do some slashing and burning, they pick up over 2024 an extra $22.5 million or an extra 26.5 million, $26.5 million. So now look, there had been estimates out there, and this isn't out of whack. I remember last year's bump was significantly large to make the folks we'll be talking to at the Combine next week giddy. I remember Brandon Beane, whose Buffalo Bills were in a cap crunch, was excited by the news of the increase. The actual number will come out next week. And I think last year we didn't even have an estimate or a range or anything in advance. It was just bang, here it is. And they were happy. because more cap space means greater flexibility to manage the cap issues you currently have, more money to spend, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole purpose of the salary cap, obviously, is to ensure that the teams don't spend each other into something other than a profitable business. That's what this is all about. You know, I've been carrying around 25 years of institutional knowledge about the way the NFL sausage gets made, and years before, paying attention to it, following it, trying to understand it. For years, there wasn't a salary cap. For decades, prior to 1993 or 4, I can't remember which year it really kicked in. It was one of those 2 years. I think the CBA arrived in 93. The salary cap arrived in 94. Free agency started to really take off. So early 90s CBA, there was no salary cap, but there was no effective way of moving from team to team. Even when your contract expired, the NFL for a long time wouldn't allow you to go sign with another team. The contract was meaningless. Your contract expires. What does it mean? You still have to do business with the team that drafted you or otherwise acquired your rights. And I think this is one of the reasons why there was real hatred in the 80s and the 70s among franchises, because it wasn't just a one-year thing that this room full of guys came together. It was year after year after year after year until the team decided they were done with the guy. I remember the Steelers teams of the 70s. They were all guys that had been drafted and developed in Pittsburgh. The Cowboys the same way. There was one player, Preston Pearson, who was a running back with the Steelers, who got traded to the Cowboys. And when they would meet in the 70s, that was always a storyline. He's the one guy from the two teams that hasn't exclusively played in his career for those two teams, but he went from one of those two teams to the other. So the 87 strike, which was aimed at, in part, securing real free agency, that failed, but it resulted in the union disclaiming interest or shutting down, in the layman term, an antitrust lawsuit against the league, because when you take away the union, everything the league does on a league-wide basis, the draft, minimum salaries, maximum salaries, any rules you would try to put across now 32 different businesses, there were fewer at the time, but any rules that would go across the various franchises are antitrust violations. Having what they call a multi-employer bargaining unit allows you to have what otherwise would be antitrust violations. That's how it all works. So the NFL needs the union. The NFL needs to have this environment. You know, most employers don't want a union. If the NFL didn't have a union, it would be 32 independent businesses competing with each other, jacking up labor prices. You'd have to worry that someone with an unlimited supply of cash was just going to buy every great player. And you would have basically what we have in baseball. Well, but even as, you know, we say all that at a time when there's a small handful of teams that run the NFL. There's a small handful of teams that have cracked the code, despite the salary cap, and the draft was really the only way to try to even out talent and create some competitive balance. But despite everything that's out there, to, in theory, create an environment where each team should win the Super Bowl once every 32 years, that it's as flat and even as it ever has been and maybe ever could be, you still have the Chiefs, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Ravens, the Bills. It's the usual suspects up here, the usual suspects at the bottom, the 10 teams that can't even tie their shoes in any given year. But the reality is, because of the salary cap, they're all profitable. That's the dirty little secret that isn't so secret. They just don't want you to focus on it. Oh, we want to win the Super Bowl every single year. Oh, I'm devastated by the fact that we haven't won the Super Bowl. Oh, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. Bull crap. Money, money, money. They're all winning the Super Bowl. They all are winning a figurative Lombardi trophy every year because the money is immense, as reflected by the fact that the salary cap has gone up from $255 million to at least $277.5, as high as $281.5. That is a reflection of the money coming in. Let's not resent the players, folks. We're going to hear what they make. There's limited transparency when it comes to what people in the NFL make. We know what the players make. The contracts get filed with the league. They get filed with the union. They get analyzed by agencies. The numbers are all out there. But for every dollar, or as the case may be, at least $275.5 million per team that go to players via the cap, roughly that same amount goes to the owners. Oh, and I know that there are the folks out there who root for the oligarchs who are saying, oh, but they have a business to run. Yeah, they have a business to run, but when your player payroll is covered by half of the revenue, you get $277.5 million or $281.5 million. You can pay your other bills. As Eddie Murphy once said, the ends are meeting like a mother effer. Trying not to curse. Don't want to put Kristen in a position where she's got to bleep a lot of this. So anyway, don't cry for the owners. And don't get mad at the players. They're the ones that we tune in to watch. The owners own the laundry. The players possess the talent. And too many people lose sight of that. And maybe it's because the owners are almost like from another planet. Like they're so detached from reality that we can't even begin to comprehend the kind of money they have and the power they yield or wield. Either way. But with players, they're like us. You're the guy that got lucky. You're the guy that won the God-given skills lottery ticket, as if it's that easy. Just because you can run fast and you're strong and you can jump and you've got great hand-eye coordination, you still have to work your ass off to develop those skills, and you're taking physical risks every time you walk onto a field. We forget about that. We just get mad because somebody's making $5 million a year. We don't blink at the fact that you've got multi-billionaires who own these teams, and they keep making more and more money every year. And what that also does, making that money, and this is the ultimate champagne and caviar problem for owners. The more money the league makes, the more money the franchises make, the more valuable the franchises become. Now you might say, how is that a problem? Well, it becomes a problem, for example, when, and these are family-owned businesses for the most part, which is just fascinating. Multi-billion-dollar football operation that is run like a mom-and-pop shop. When dad dies, and this franchise has bloated to 10 billion or more of actual, if we were selling it, value, somebody's got to pay Uncle Sam. Estate taxes. We've had franchises in the past that have had to be sold because the family didn't have the money laying around or lying around, as the case may be, to write the check to Uncle Sam for the estate tax. So you have to do a lot of careful estate planning to ensure that the team can stay in the family as these numbers go up and up and up. And what we're seeing now that the NFL has allowed private equity to partially invest in NFL teams, up to 10% of any given team, what are we seeing? More and more teams exploring the sale of 10% of the total equity. Recently, it was the Giants. Now, it's the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have been family-owned, I think, forever. It was the Morabito brothers who founded the team. It was Edward DeBartolo Sr. who bought the team in 1977 for $13 million. Now the DeBartolo York family, and it went from Edward Sr. to Eddie, and he had that little thing down in Louisiana with the suitcase full of cash and the governor and the gambling license and yada, yada, yada. Eddie doesn't work here no more. It went to his sister, Denise DeBartolo York, her husband, Dr. John York, and now their son, Jed York, is the CEO of the team. 49ers reportedly looking to sell 10%. 10% is the magic number because that's the maximum you can sell to private equity. Now, they haven't decided whether or not they're going to do it. They don't know whether it's going to be private equity or individuals who will buy a portion of the team. And one of the reasons private equity is involved is there just aren't enough people out there to write the check for a small, non-voting interest in a football team. Is it a bad investment? Well, compared to the other things that are available to you when you have that much money, probably yes. But it's a way to become rich and famous, owning a sports team. A wise man once told me the only thing better than being rich and famous is being rich. And plenty of owners find out the hard way. I miss the days when nobody knew who I was. So you've got fewer and fewer people who have the resources or the willingness to buy a piece of the team. Here comes private equity. And the valuation, according to the report, is in excess of $9 billion. Now, that's the entire franchise. That's, anybody that's watched Shark Tank has figured out how this works. You do an investment based on a total valuation. So if you value it, and this is math that I can perform for the most part, if you value it at more than $9 billion and you're trying to sell 10%, I don't even need to let the gears spin. It's $900 million that you're looking for that 10%, more than $900 million for an asset that was purchased exclusively 100% for $13 million in 1977. And I know time value of money and inflation, et cetera, but $13 million for 100%, and now it's $900 million for 10%. We don't know that they're going to try to do it. They're just considering it. We don't know that anyone is going to pay that, but a $9 billion valuation would be a record. The most we've seen a team go for was the Broncos a couple of years ago. No, see, it changes so fast. It was the Broncos at $4.6 billion, then it was the Commanders at $6 billion. And it keeps going up and up and up. And I'm glad I mentioned the Broncos because they're relevant to my next topic. And this all ties together, okay? And I know today is Money Day on PFT PM, but there ain't a lot going on. This is a good time to talk about this, and this is a good time to kind of reset the way we think about the league. Before we get pissed off at the players who are going to be getting contracts in the next few weeks, let's remember the people who hold the pink slips are holding a shitload, sorry, Kristen, of cash, and it keeps going up and up and up. So salary cap rising means more money for the owners. Portions of the teams being sold at $9 billion valuations, potentially, more money for the owners. So, how else do the owners get more money? Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Governor, congressional delegations, taxpayers. Our stadium doesn't compare well to the other stadiums out there. All of those fancy schmancy new stadiums, they're making us look bad. Our stadium's obsolete, and we've explored renovating. Here are the costs. Here are the costs. Look. We've prepared a report. An independent consultant has prepared a report. Here are the costs of renovating the stadium. Here are the costs of maintaining the stadium. Wouldn't it just make more sense to build a new one? See, you present it in a way that somebody else is the one that says, well, we should just build a new one. Well, look at what it's going to cost to renovate it. Look at what it's going to cost for upkeep. We should just build a new one. The Texans are the latest team to be exploring the possibility of a new stadium. Now, they've already got NRG Stadium in Houston, right next door to the Astrodome, which is still standing. It hasn't been used in years, and it's still there. So they've got this thing going. It's like Monument Park. It's stadium farm / stadium graveyard. I say build a third one and leave the other two up. Let's see how long we can go. 500 years from now, when the aliens finally take over, or sooner. I'm starting to root for the aliens, frankly. But please come save us. But 500 years from now, maybe there'll be 20 of them. And in Houston, the reason the Texans are there is because 30 years ago, the Oilers wanted a new stadium. They didn't get the public money they were looking for, so they hit the road to Nashville, where they were more than happy to make a stadium available with taxpayer money. And in came the Texans 7 years later, and now they got their stadium and 20 plus years into the existence of that stadium. Think about that. You have a piece of property for 20 years. You use it 10 days out of the year, and all of a sudden it's obsolete. It's only obsolete because this game keeps playing out. You get enough new stadiums that have all the bells and whistles and new technologies and all these advancements, all of a sudden, your place doesn't look too good. And then the new stadiums become the leverage for old stadiums to become new stadiums. And it just keeps rolling. It's like row, row, row your boat. It just keeps going and going and going into the future. And inevitably, that new stadium that was just built is going to be obsolete in comparison to all the others that were built because the new stadiums made theirs look bad. And it just keeps going and going and going, which is fine if the ultra rich are the ones, when somebody really rich shows up in town and buys a lot and there's a house on it that's perfectly fine, but they really want to flex. This is the ultimate flex. We're buying that house, which is perfectly fine, and we're tearing it down. And we're building a new house on that spot. That is the flex. Just do that, Cal McNair. Tear down NRG Stadium, or better yet, tear down the Astrodome and build the new Texans Stadium there. Or you can apply that logic to any of the other teams that are currently looking for a new stadium. And I said a few minutes ago, I'm glad I remembered the Broncos and what they sold for, because they're on the list that I put together, and I forgot to put them on the list. I tried to make a list of all the teams that are currently jostling to some degree or another for a new stadium. Because at first I thought, okay, well, the Texans join, 2 or 3 others. No, it's not 2 or 3 others. And this is a broad list, and this is based upon active efforts to get a new stadium or renovate a new stadium, but that might lead to the natural conclusion that we should just build a new one for what it's going to cost to renovate. Or I've seen reports in the not too distant past suggesting that the time has come to explore a new stadium. So we've got the Texans. We've got the Broncos. We've got the Browns. We know about the Browns effort. It's already spawned litigation, and there's this effort to move the Browns to the suburbs in Brook Park and build a dome stadium. And Cleveland has activated the Art Modell law to keep the team in town or give somebody else who will keep the team in town a chance to buy it. So we got the Browns, Commanders, Bears, Bengals, Chiefs, Eagles. I've seen reports that it's time to start thinking about a replacement to Lincoln Financial Field. Panthers, David Tepper. We've seen enough to believe that it's just a matter of time before they do something there. And I throw in the Saints just because I feel like the league is going to put pressure on the Saints to build a new stadium, even though the Superdome is perfectly fine. I was there a week and a half ago. It's perfectly fine. It's been renovated, retrofitted. Others have gone through multiple new stadiums with taxpayer handouts since the Superdome was built, and the Superdome is still standing. But hey, that Super Bowl is a pretty nice event in New Orleans. It'd be a shame if you don't get any more Super Bowls. It'd be a shame if, because we can't keep coming back to this obsolete, outdated stadium. We got too many state-of-the-art venues out there where we can do the Super Bowl. So, it's your decision. We're not telling you need a new stadium. We're just telling you if you want to keep hosting Super Bowls, you better think about updating and replacing your current stadium. And this just keeps going and going and going. I mentioned the Commanders. One of the things I've been meaning to write this week, there was an item in the Washington Times regarding the reality. And remember when the bill first was gaining steam to grant authority over the site of the old RFK Stadium to the District of Columbia, a 99-year lease where DC can take it and do whatever it wants. Elon Musk chimed in, no taxpayer money should go to this project. And he was correctly fact-checked. No taxpayer money was going to this effort to basically say, hey, here's an empty, vacant stadium on a specific number of acres in DC. It's sitting there. There's no money coming from it. It's just there. Let's just give it to DC and let them see what they can do. That part doesn't entail taxpayer money, but, and people got mad at me for pointing out facts. I don't care about politics as much as I care about facts. And I've learned that on both sides of the aisle, politics really don't care about facts anymore, which leads to the fact that a lot of people are just kind of checking out. But the fact is, the Commanders aren't going to move into a new stadium at the site of RFK and pay for it all themselves. They're not going to do it. And the item in the Washington Times focuses on the reality. And look at what's happening. It's all about slashing costs, slashing costs, slashing costs. Do you really think in the current political climate they're going to devote a single dollar of taxpayer money to a stadium in DC? Hell no. Now, maybe the option to build in DC gets you a better deal in Maryland, or maybe even Virginia comes to the table. But this is where we are politically. The will of the people over the past 15 years is currently reflected in the attitudes of those who are governing on that point. I don't know on how many others, and it depends upon who you talk to, but for the most part, there has been over the past 15 years a strong appetite against using public money to finance stadiums. It gets harder and harder to justify it as we see how much more money the teams are making and how the values of the teams are going up. At some point, people have to say, pay for your own damn stadium. I got to pay for my own house. The government doesn't pay for part of my house just because I know the right people and I said, pretty please. So I think all those teams I listed are going to have issues. They're going to have problems. And really the only way you can pull it off, we've been saying this for years, if you put it on a ballot, you're going to fail. The Chiefs found that out the hard way last year. If the Chiefs can't get enough public support in their home area after winning 2 straight Super Bowls and having the biggest star currently in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes, and then you couple that with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, if you can't ride that to a winning vote, to just continue to allow a very small percentage sales tax to exist, if you can't do that, none of these is ever going to pass at the ballot box. What you've got to do is you got to come up with a way to work the levers of government to get the politicians who don't want to be the ones who lost the team to another city. Oh, God, I can't have that on my shoulders. All right, let's find a way to move the money around and the voters don't have to know about it. And I'd rather face a challenger in the future who says, you devoted taxpayer money to the stadium, than a challenger in the future who says, you're the reason why the team left. I still think the mood continues to shift away, and it may just be a matter of time that the governors and the mayors and the county commissioners or anyone else who would face at the next election losing the team as a talking point, maybe get to the point where they don't care. And look, the fact that some NFL owners do own their own stadiums, it tells you they all can if they want to. But they keep coming back to the trough of taxpayer money because they can. If you can pull it off, go for it. Rich people didn't get really rich by being stupid. If there's some government program out there that's going to give you free money, hell yes. The challenge is on the government to turn off that faucet. The challenge for the major sports leagues might be to turn off the faucet of all-star games. They're just not doing well. The NBA All-Star Game on Sunday night averaged 4.7 million viewers. That's a 13% drop from last year. When I saw 4.7 million, I thought, boy, that sounds familiar. That was the number that the NFL got for the post-Pro Bowl flag football thing that I've never watched. I never will watch it. Sorry, NFL. I'll never watch it. It's not football. And I know we're in an era where flag football is, they're going to try to make us like flag football. Flag football is not the football that I care about. Now, some of you may just be worn down in time. And look, I know flag football is going to be an Olympic event in 2028, and NBC has the Olympics. And if I'm going to watch Olympics, I'll at least watch flag football. You attach the American flag to flag football or any of these other events. We talked about this yesterday. Nobody cares about track for 3 years and 52 or 50 weeks. And then for those final 2 weeks when it's the Olympics, hey, track, yes, track. And then the Olympics end, it's like, I'd rather watch paint dry. So the point is, whether it's NFL, Pro Bowl, flag football, whether it's the NBA All-Star Game, and they had some weird format this year where they did multiple games with breaks in between, Major League Baseball, the Midsummer Classic. I remember when the All-Star Game was a big deal. I went to it in Cincinnati in 1988, and I was excited for weeks in advance. I went to it in 1994. I went to the skills thing the day before. It used to be in the afternoon. I went to that. And I went to the All-Star Game the next night in 1994. It was a big, big deal. 30 years ago. None of them are a big deal anymore. In fact, they've all faded to the point where the NHL does this four nations face-off. The final is tonight between the USA and Canada, and everybody loves it. Number one, because it's real competition, and number two, it adds that. There's just something about that national pride. You throw the flag on it, you throw the flags of multiple countries onto it, and all of a sudden people care. And when you see the way that hockey players will play in an exhibition versus the way that football, basketball, and baseball players will play in an exhibition, hell, one of the big memories from the sports world for me growing up was Pete Rose just blowing up Ray Fosse at home plate in an all-star game, a meaningless exhibition. Now, there are very good business reasons for basketball players, football players, even baseball players to not go out there and risk injury. For baseball and basketball, you still got half of the season or so to go. For football, you've just gotten through an entire season and you're healthy enough to go out and play another game. Hell no, you shouldn't go play another game. And if you do, you shouldn't play it hard. It shouldn't be Sean Taylor blowing up Brian Moorman, one of the all-time great Pro Bowl highlights. It doesn't make business sense. Tyler Eifert, remember him? He was a great tight end on his way to free agency, messed up his ankle in one of the last actual Pro Bowls before it went full-on two-hand touch in full pads. It just doesn't make sense. Which makes the fact that hockey players are out there throwing their bodies around even more fascinating. So I don't know what the future holds because, again, 4.7 million simultaneous viewers. That's good. That's really good. In this day and age, when you can watch anything you want at any time you want, anywhere you want on the various streaming apps, everything's on demand. There are no events that pull a live audience together like live sports, and nothing like the NFL can do it. At some point, though, it keeps dropping and dropping and dropping, and you have to wonder, where's the floor at which one of these leagues says, it's just not worth it. It's no longer worth it. And I think for now, their attitude is, well, we'll weather the storm and we'll see where it goes. But I think the storm isn't going away. And the numbers are going to keep going down. And at some point, you just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? And at the point where it's no longer profitable, obviously, that's the no-brainer. You pull the plug when it's no longer profitable. But there's a point where it's just very marginally profitable. But, like, what's the point? Do we really need to do this? I said years ago, just name the Pro Bowl team and don't do anything. Just have a dinner somewhere. Name the Pro Bowl team at the NFL Honors. Right? They do that now. I made the argument before the NFL Honors even existed. Just do that. Do the All-Pro team. Now, the All-Pro team is league-wide. You can switch the All-Pro team to AFC and NFC. More free work for the voters to do, even though the AP is presumably getting paid to put it together, but I digress. Do an AFC All-Pro team and NFC All-Pro team, name them at the NFL Honors, and be done with it. At some point, it's going to happen. Because at some point, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. All right, last topic. Since we're talking about squeezing juice, squeezing money, making money, David Purdom of ESPN.com had this item yesterday, caught my eye right away. The U.S. betting industry realized record revenues in 2024 of $13.7 billion. That's not the handle. That's the revenue. That's the wins. And if the House is experiencing record revenue, the bettors have experienced record losses. Now, look, I'm a firm believer in our inalienable rights. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness includes within it the right to screw up your life if you choose to do so. There are many things out there on which you can waste your money. You can undermine your family's interest. People get addicted to all sorts of things, and it creates problems. It's not good, but it happens. Freedom includes the freedom to mess up your life. It's unfortunate. It would be better if people didn't, but our government doesn't police people to say, thou shalt not gamble, thou shalt not smoke, thou shalt not take drugs, thou shalt not drink booze. It's part of our freedom. The point is, and I look at the stock market, which is heavily regulated. In the stock market, the average random purchaser and seller of stock can make money. In the betting industry, and I'm not saying don't bet, I just want people to fully appreciate the path down which they're treading when they decide that they're going to make some extra money, and I've got a system. And all those other people who lose are stupid and they're suckers. I know how to win. Be careful. Once you get that dopamine rush from a win, and well, I lost that money that I won, but man, it sure felt good to win. And then you get another dopamine rush from a win, and well, yeah, I won 300, but I lost 350. But I won 300. You know, anytime somebody brags to me about some big payday they had with some same game parlay or 12-leg prop bet, whatever, I say, tell me about all your losses too. I'm very interested in your wins, but I'm more interested in your losses. I'm more interested in how down you are for the season. And I know some people that, well, I was up for the season. Okay, that's fine. Let's do all the seasons you've been gambling. Because you don't get to $13.7 billion in record revenue for the U.S. sports betting industry unless the betting public has lost $13.7 billion. So, again, I'm not anti-gambling. My dad was a bookie. It's well established. Go read Father of Mine, 99 cents on Amazon for the ebook, 99 cents for the sequel, ebook on Amazon, Son of Mine. But he told me when I was old enough to hear the message and young enough that I wasn't inclined to rebel. There's a sweet spot there, kind of like right before puberty. You're starting to figure your shit out a little bit, but the hormones haven't taken over your systems. He said, you can't win. Don't bet because you can't win. And I've never had the desire to do it. I love football for the sport of it. I don't even really like fantasy football anymore because it warps the sport of it. Nobody who's playing football gives a shit about anyone's fantasy football team. Even the guys who have fantasy football teams are just doing it because and I'm not saying you shouldn't do fantasy football. You know, it's a camaraderie and, you know, it creates a separate way to be interested when your team is ass. I get it. But I've always loved football for the football. The other stuff, And the gambling, look, I choose not to do it. I think that NBC policies prevent me from doing it anyway. I don't need to worry about that because I'm not inclined to do it. But look, somebody's doing it to the tune of $13.7 billion in losses. And I know when PFT Live returns, there will be DraftKings reads in the show. That's NBC's business, not mine. Now, I know NBC pays me. We have no gambling deal. We've never had a gambling deal directly with PFT. If you see any ads on PFT that are gambling related, that's NBC, not us. So it's not hypocritical for me to say these things. I'm just trying to be real here. Because on one hand, yes, we have the freedom to screw up our own lives. On the other hand, this is another tool that's available to do it, along with all the others. As of May 2018, when the Supreme Court opened the floodgates for all states, if they choose to do so, to have legalized betting, it pulled gambling out of the shadows. It legitimized gambling. I never talked about my dad being a bookie until after that happened, until after we're all carrying around, well, those of us who choose to have it, the gambling app on our phone. And the bigger problem is, and I think this is where the NFL needs to be concerned, you've got now a generation of kids who have grown up watching sports on TV with what? When it's time to go to break. No more cigarette commercials. Those are long gone, right? You get the beer commercials, but, you know, those come with the appropriate disclaimers. You get more and more gambling, and it's tied directly to the product. You'll see gambling ads embedded within the content that I'd say to somebody who's 11 or 12 years old, they don't recognize that when we do the segment about the, hey, here are the plays of the day. It's a commercial. They're trying to get you to open up your app and make a bet. They want you to make that bet. Might not be a great bet, but it's a profitable bet. And so you got these kids who grow up and they've grown up in that environment and now they're entering pro sports. You know, we see these blips on the radar screen for now. Jonte Porter, the Shohei Ohtani thing, even though it wasn't him, it was interpreter. I just feel like it's a matter of time before there's something big that happens because it's been normalized, it's been legitimized, and it's so widespread, and it's rewiring the brains of people the same way our phones did. And it's part of that experience. It's part of that broader dopamine rush that comes from scrolling TikTok and checking Twitter and, oh, hey, you know, hey, somebody's saying this is the play of the day. That guy I follow on Twitter says that these are his best bets of the day. I better make them. So we'll see what happens. I say that because I've never gotten the impression the NFL is nearly as concerned about it as they should be. And maybe the idea is, and I've used this metaphor many times, the old game show where you'd go into the booth where there's money flying everywhere and you're just grabbing as many dollars as you can until the clock runs out. I think the NFL, the owners, they're grabbing as many dollars as they can until the clock runs out. And they'll worry about what comes next once that clock hits 000. Okay, that's it. On that happy note, that's it for today. 4 for 4, PFT PM. I'm writing the check today to do it again tomorrow. When I wake up tomorrow morning and reach for the mannequin head that carries my toupee and ask myself, why the hell did I agree to do this for another day? I will blame Thursday Florio. I will say that asshole committed me to doing a fifth day. But I got to, we're this close. PFT Live is back on Monday from our normal locations. I'll be here. Sims will be in Connecticut, assuming he gets back from the Caribbean or wherever he's vacationing. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Just a few weeks after New Orleans. I don't like the 2 weeks in between. I like 3 weeks in between, but they didn't ask me. But I know this. There will be no mistaking Indianapolis for New Orleans. It is a very different experience. In New Orleans, it's a lot of shrimp and grits. In Indy, it's a lot of things that used to go moo. So I need to do a full body cleanse to prepare myself for the stakes to come. And then I'm going to need to do something afterward to kind of shock my system back into life. So that's the schedule over the next week or so. We'll see you again tomorrow, unless Friday Florio wins. Have a great day. Check us out around the clock at ProFootballTalk.com. Thanks for some of your time. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.